Today's podcast is brought to you by our friends over at Smart to Play Modern Endpoint Management Solutions for the Hybrid Workplace. I almost said that smoothly. Almost said it smoothly. Almost got it. But make sure you head on over to smartdeploy.com/FRD for a free offer worth $570. That is our friends over at Smart Deploy. And we are here on a Monday morning.
Tell the people. Tell them what you're doing to me now. You bastard.
Black screen. Wow. Paul said he had a surprise intro, and I did not think it was going to go that way, but we will dine on the news. So there's some, I guess, in the world of Twitter, it would be called a personal news update.
Wow.
Yeah, that's what they call them, Paul. Tomorrow will be my last official full-time day as the executive editor of BWW Media Group, which is the parent company over Petri and Thurrott. Yep. I will be leaving, but there are good implications for people who somehow enjoy this podcast, that the podcast is actually going to continue on, right. But my day-to-day role, it will not. This was, there's no reason to hide where I'm headed, right?
No.
So
Apple. He's going to Apple.
I'm going to
you bastard. No.
Actually, I'm going to Xbox. Xbox has hired me to do. No, just Jesus. Could you imagine?
They're tired of the leaks. It's the only way we can rein them in.
Like, Brad, why is your room in the back office? And like, there's just a line of people with lead pipes just standing.
They're just
outside.
Cementing it in.
Yeah,
like he's going to be the guy behind the wall.
No, so I'm actually headed to a company called Stardock. Now, some of you, or actually probably a lot of you, may have heard of this. I know Paul and I have like a weird love triangle with the CEO, who's also named as Brad right. Wardell. I've known him since 2006, something like that.
I am convinced I had a phone call with him for first time I ever talked to him. If it wasn't the late 90s, it was like 2000 or maybe 2001. Yeah. It was a long time ago.
Yeah. So what I am doing specifically is they have a suite of Windows applications that sort of their productivity apps. Start 8 was a big coming up for them, at least for some of their tools. Then they have Start 10. They just announced Start 11, which if you go back and watch the podcast, I was very non-committal about it. I let Paul talk about it because I already knew at that point, and I was trying to just.
Brad was like, "Is it cool to?" And I'm like, "Dude, I'm covering this anyway."
Yeah, I was like, "I'm not gonna until it's public. I'm not gonna talk about it."
I mean, granted, we're gonna become like a subsite of Stardock now, but it's fine. It's fine.
Yeah. So my role is going to go lead that organization that's building all that Windows software. Right. I've known Brad for so long, and he reached out and said, "Hey, I need some help with this stuff." Windows 11, realistically, like Windows is sort of back. Microsoft now cares about it again, and Stardock has a bunch of Windows software, and I'm going to help lead the team and make it better.
We'll discuss this in the near future, but I have an idea for the next app, which we can look at in a moment. But first, I wanted to ask you a question, which is, admit it, it was something I did, right? This was always going to happen, right?
And that's part of the thing is like this podcast is a big deal. Like Paul and I have been doing this for, I think it'll be about 5 years this fall. I think because we didn't do it the first year because I started September 1st. I'll be ending like exactly 6 years to the day after I started. Yeah. And then we started it about a year later with Thurrott Premium. Okay. And then we've been doing it.
Yeah, I mean, originally this podcast was it a premium thing right from the beginning, or
for
just Friday? And I think we switched it to just Fridays, and then eventually realized there's nothing particularly premium about this podcast. But
it's just us.
Yeah. Well, I'll just say this. I mean, to the world. I mean, and this is an ugly conversation. I hope not to have with work someday, but I would never do this with anybody else. Like I wouldn't get up every day and do this podcast. Like you're the only reason I would bother, and no, I mean, I enjoy it.
Yeah,
and
that's
we don't get to hang out at a bar every night. And, so this is kind of how we replace that. It's cool. So
yeah, no, I mean,
I'm glad we can continue it.
When people who don't know what I do say like, what's the podcast? I'm like, imagine you walk into a bar after a long day of work and you sit down and you're waiting for your beer to show up. Like that is the podcast.
Yeah, because a
And
lot of times those conversations literally amount to what went wrong at work today. You
and the
know,
brilliance is we
right?
do it in the morning, so we get to
Right.
project what's going
We
to go
guess
wrong today.
that's right. Or just we've been stewing over something from yesterday, which we should get to next because we have certainly been stewing.
Yes, we have been stewing, but before we stew,
Yeah.
you should check out this soup from our friends over at Smart Deploy. The
Wow.
modern workplace requires modern IT tools. When legacy solutions like Ghost, MDT, and Acronis Snap Deployed no longer fit the bill, try Smart Deploy's modern endpoint management solutions. Head on over to smartdeploy.com/FRD to get started with your free exclusive software worth over $570. Now on to the delicious soup. What comes after soup? Bread? Maybe salad? Soup and salad?
The amuse-bouche.
I've been eating a lot of salad lately. Actually, I've been on like a salad with like walnuts and bacon and
Oh boy.
a little
So
parmesan.
you got to throw in some deli meat to make that interesting to me,
bacon.
or maybe like some hard-boiled eggs. You know.
But then you put some spinach in there, a little romaine to fluff it up a little bit. Because I like spinach, but I cannot eat a giant like pure bowl of spinach. It's too much. So I put in some filler, which is just crunchy water known as romaine.
Crunchy water. Water in solid form.
Yeah, it's pretty
Yeah.
much what it is. Speaking of less than solid form things, so Paul and I knew about this on Friday, but we opted not to talk about it on Friday. And it's going to kind of work out in our favor because we didn't want to hold the podcast until whatever.
Oh my God, has this story changed over time?
So let me set the stage here, Paul. Let me set the stage. So Microsoft on Friday at about 1 p.m., little Friday afternoon news-ish dump, updated the Windows 11 minimum specs. Now, the only thing that is changing here is that they have added some 7th gen Intel chips, which conveniently that line just hits the Surface Studio 2, says, oh yeah, we're going to include that one, and then slices down again. No additional AMD chips. They are including the X series of the 7th gen, which is like the 7900X, which was Intel's high-end chipset.
I was going to say, this impacts 1,100 customers at most.
I'm one of them.
And if you're a PC maker, wouldn't you be a little upset by this?
Yeah.
The randomness of
Yeah.
that chipset in the Studio 2, which they claim has something to do with some other hardware, blah, 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 nonsense. Just don't pay attention because we're just kidding.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know. Anyway, but there's that. So that's level one.
Yeah,
But there's
that's
more.
level 1. Level 2 is that let's say you have a 5th gen chip and you want to run Windows 11 because you're an enthusiast. Well, Microsoft says, hey, there's a path forward for you. You have two options. One, just stay in the Windows Insider program. That is absolutely one route you can go. Just know that you're doing it at your own peril, that they're not going to be testing on those machines, and you will have to basically accept that you're going to be running a new build of Windows 11. I guess if you're on the beta ring, at least probably every 6 weeks, something like that. But stability is probably low on the priority.
Eventually it might hit the release preview ring. Who knows?
Yeah.
So.
And then the other option, which has created some issues, which Paul, I think, has a few
that's
feelings
level
on.
3.
The other option is that Microsoft said that if you use the media creation tool, which is you download the media creation tool, put it onto a USB, you can install just the release version of Windows 11 on unsupported hardware, knowing that you are running it on unsupported hardware and you're taking that risk into your own hands. That was the end of the initial announcement, initial conversation.
Right.
And then, Paul, do you want to?
Yeah, I do. But I'm going to actually inject something I haven't written about. In the interim, I have talked to 2 people from 2 different PC makers to get their take on this, because not on the level 3 stuff, but I guess on the first 3 things that Brad just talked about, but not on the next thing. So the notion here is that with Windows 10, Microsoft really wanted to get everybody on the same version of Windows, which has proven impossible, but get as many people as possible, because that kind of reduces the security requirements of keeping the community secure. It was all about security, but they didn't really mandate it, right? They got a lot of pushback from enterprises, so they extended the support for each version a little further. There was a bunch of back and forth. Of course, Windows Update and Windows as a Service was a frickin' mess.
Mm-hmm.
And over time, they kind of evolved the system. They got it into a good place. And so with Windows 11, this is Microsoft presumably taking a hard line in the sand. We are going to have these requirements. They didn't do a good job of explaining why. They belatedly did do some of that on Friday. But the idea here is that if you have a certain amount of hardware backing for security through the chipset, the core CPU, through the equivalent secure boot, TPM 2.0, et cetera, this thing is dramatically more secure than systems that don't meet those requirements, because you can only do so much in software. And by the way, there's a good case to be made.
Mm-hmm.
So like I said, I talked to two people, and the conversation on this topic was basically, if Microsoft makes exceptions, does that break the whole security model? I mean, if you're just going to make exceptions, why not just let anybody do it, you know? And the answer was no. In both cases, they both said the same thing, which was, and maybe they were, they talked to Microsoft and got it in their heads, but it's a reasonable discussion, which is this. You know, the percentage of people that are going to do this is very small. If you look at the wider user base out there with, we'll say, 7th gen or older hardware, the majority of them are businesses. They're staying on hardware for a reason. That's what they do. Yeah, that's what they've always done. They intend to ride this thing out. They're going to stay on Windows 10. You know, they're just going to stay on Windows 10. And Windows 10 is a much better value proposition than Windows 8 was when Windows 10 came around, right? So Microsoft couldn't take a hard stance on hardware with Windows 10 because the alternative was so horrible that there would have been a revolt. Whereas in this case, the alternative is fine. It's well understood. We're 6 years in.
Yep.
The company's like, great, I will stay on Windows 10. Thank you. They're happy to do it. So the percentage of people, and they are people, that these enthusiasts who want to take a 7th or a 6th or whatever generation Intel or equivalent processor-based system, TPM 1.2, and upgrade to Windows 11 is actually very, very small. Very, very vocal, but very, very small. And so, no, this doesn't hamper the security of Windows 11. That was the answer. So I woke up Saturday morning, Brad. I was in a great mood. Microsoft had done the right thing. I was literally preparing to write an editorial, not a tutorial, about how, look at these guys. They're making good decisions. This is a part of the company that seems to trip over its own feet all the time. And then they did. Because the thing is,
there was an asterisk to my previous statement.
Yeah. Turns out they didn't tell us everything.
Nope.
Didn't tell us everything. And so I don't know who asked for. Some people had. I accepted this like the guileless idiot that I am. I guess. I mean, I took them at their word. You would think of this. How many times do I get smacked in the face before I start flinching? Like I just accepted that what they told me told us is truth. And some other publications, I think it was PC World, maybe the first, or PC World, I think, had a follow-up question. How does this work? And then we got the little more nuanced story. We'll call this phase 4, level 4, whatever. Now, I want to be clear here because Microsoft can't be, and we just don't know 100%. But there's some wiggly language in there. These computers may not get Windows updates, including security updates. Now, I'm hoping this wiggle room is legal, right? Because on Friday, they didn't come out in the blog post and say that level 2 and 3 stuff that you just mentioned. They didn't mention any of that. They didn't say, oh, by the way, anyone can grab the ISO and just install it and they'll be on the path. They didn't say, oh, by the way, anyone can stay in the Windows update, the Windows Insider program and keep getting updates. They didn't say that, although that is the case. So this time, in response to questions, they're saying, well, maybe. And I just think it's something to protect them against a class action lawsuit. Essentially, I don't know how else to say it. That they may in fact provide security updates. It would be irresponsible not to, right? But they can't say that. So as of today, as of Saturday morning, I'll call it, I wrote a very different type of tutorial, no editorial, kidding. Because Microsoft once again has done what Microsoft always does, unfortunately, which is inject uncertainty into something that should be certain.
Yep. And
listen, I've been writing about this company for over 25 years. You would, like I said, you think I would just get used to this. I just don't have words for how badly something this important was communicated after how badly they communicated it back in June, apologized, provided more information on Friday. And I thought, here we go. We've turned the corner on this. And we have not.
We were this close.
Yep.
Like even in my post, it's like, hey, this is logical. This is fair. It makes sense. You're taking risk in your own hands. And then all of a sudden they say, oh, they may not get security updates after all this stuff was published. I don't understand how you don't. It doesn't. One of the guys I talked to about this it was interesting because I didn't know about this bit of it at the time, but he sort of said to me,
it's like when you have Windows XP and it's out of support, but there's this massive attack. You got to supply the security update. You just do it, even though it's not supported. You do that. And I was thinking to myself, again, I didn't know this was going to happen, but this kind of justified what Microsoft was doing with Windows 11 for these enthusiasts. That, of course, they're going to get these updates. Now, I still think they are, by the way. But again, I'm doing it again. I'm like, obviously, they're going to make the right decision. Yeah, but look, you're going to Stardock. Maybe Brad, you guys can make a Windows updater tool for these Windows 11 SAPs. There will be PowerShell scripts. There will be all kinds of different solutions for automating the application of updates. Windows updates are available for manual download, right? You could go get them, but I mean, my God, who wants to keep track of that every month? It's really frustrating.
It is.
Really frustrating.
We were so close.
Not as frustrating as you leaving me, but whatever. But it's fine.
It's
fine.
I'm trying
I got
not
through
to
Windows.
celebrate.
I'll get through you. It's okay.
You're fine. But I guess really at the end of the day, the only thing that's going to change with me, at least to this podcast, is that there's probably going to be a little bit more breaks than usual. For example, like my first week, I'm not going to be podcasting then.
Right. Right.
And so it'll be a little bit more broken up until I get to the swing of things, and then we get back to sort of the ritual, if you will.
So your last day is actually tomorrow, Tuesday, right? The end of the month. Is that how this works?
Yeah, because it's the end of the month. It was just a clean break, and
Brad, who am I going to complain to when our meetings go too long, or when can I still just text you if I'm disgruntled about something, or how does that work?
You can. I don't know if I'm going to be obligated to reply unless it's.
Oh man, you have no idea the psychological benefit there was to having Brad around.
Yes, I was just.
I'm going to be talk to me in 3 months. We'll see how things are going.
If Paul has a mental collapse over the next 6 months, I think we could attribute it to potentially this. Because effectively, what happens is Paul.
Or to some Windows 11 thing. I mean, they're happening at the same time. It's kind of hard to say, but
something happens. I take not the brunt of it, but he's like, "This is going on." I'm like, "All right, I'll get it fixed. Like it's fine."
Right.
And then magically things get fixed. We should probably mention the other side of this equation. So there is somebody taking my place, at least onto the Petri side. So Russell Smith, who has actually been at Petri longer than both Paul and I, actually.
Longer than both of us combined, perhaps. Yeah. I mean,
is going to be taking over my day-to-day role on the editorial side over on Petri. He's not going to be doing this podcast. I guess he could, but then I could just ride off into the sunset. But that's not happening. So that was a promotion for him. He's been around. He's been one of the most consistent writers on the site for a decade, effectively, and he's a good fit.
I was convinced I knew this guy. Like he's been around so long. I just sort of felt like I know I've run into him and something, and I haven't actually. So that's kind of interesting. But
yeah. So other things that are interesting. Let's see if I can do this one correctly for our friends over at Smart Deploy, because it is 47% faster than Semantic Ghost and 100% worth it. Make sure to check out smartdeploy.com/FRD for your free offer, and we'll catch all of you right back here tomorrow.
Bastard.